Yeah? Okay. Hi, good afternoon, brethren. Here we are on this sunny, delightfully Sunday, 7th day of Unleavened Bread, the last appointed time of these early spring feasts. We know from Leviticus 23 that during the pilgrimage feast, the 3 every year, that men are to bring an offering from the blessings that Jehovah has bestowed on them. Obviously, coming down to Jerusalem, it wasn't always possible to bring your bull, bring your lamb, ram, even perhaps your pigeon. So even in the agricultural age, people would sell the livestock and bring cash to the temple. But this didn't supplant the usual tithes that were given throughout the year from general increase. Sometimes maybe these days we think about, do we take our tithe pre-tax, post-tax, anything else surrounding tax? But can you imagine what it was like trying to find the best cow, sheep, ram, goat from your flock, and then decide this one's going to go, and you've got a child that says, no, that one's mine, and it's the one that's been more attached. Is it not easier to give some money now than it was to select the cutest of the lambs, cutest of the calves maybe, and bring them in? So very different decisions that people had to face back in the wilderness, back when Israel lived in the land and the tabernacle and the temple were working, but the offerings were made. Let's remember going back to the garden in the first place, as we read in Genesis 1 through to 3 and what happened afterwards in chapter 3, that God created us humans not only to tend the garden, but also to be his priests and servants, priestly kings if you like. It was something that God had in mind from the beginning, so what we think of as his millennial plan was his plan all along. It's just we screwed up big time. And so we weren't in the garden. City-states were formed. We know that Cain was quite quick to establish settlements. But we see at that same point that God had done another separation, because he separated the children of Seth from the children of Cain. It didn't stop Cain's family giving offerings. But were they to Jehovah? Doubtful, isn't it? Not when you read what happened later on and from those that came from the Cain line. But it's still good to know that we've still got Father Jehovah as the Most High God. His heavenly high priest is still in office. Jesus, Yeshua, our Redeemer, and the earlier priesthood, that Levitical priesthood, the Aaronic priesthood, the Zadokite priesthood, has been replaced, but even then there are still Levites on the earth. But we have our high priest who doesn't have to do the same as any high priest for Israel or any of the Levitical team for Israel, of cleansing themselves, that they could be in a position where they weren't being hypocritical in the teaching of the children of Israel. Brethren, offerings were made by every other nation under heaven from the beginning. Our God, Jehovah by name, specifies tithes and offerings. Some would call it legalism. But what he's doing is saying, this is how I view things. I had the master plan to create the heavens and the earth, the trees, the crops, the human body that can digest food and function, can till the earth. I promise to provide rain in due season. Everything that you need, and more besides, I provide. Don't hack me off. So the statutes and the commandments are there. But we can remember that Christ said, God is good always. Doesn't he cause the sun and rain to shine and rain on the unrighteous as well as the righteous? No matter what we think, his faithfulness is there as an example. But things didn't always go well with Israel. And this isn't a downer on Israel. Malachi 3 tells us in verse 6, "For I am Jehovah, I shall not change, and you, O sons of Jacob, shall not come to an end. From the days of your fathers you have turned aside from my laws." That's a pretty bold statement and an honest one. You didn't guard them. Turn back to me, and I shall turn back to you, said Jehovah of hosts. But you said, in what shall we turn back? Would a man rob Elohi? Yet you're robbing me. And you said, in what have we robbed you? Clueless. In tithe and offering. You've cursed me with a curse. And that's God saying, Israel's cursed God. Do you remember in Job where Satan said to God, leave him to me. I'll let him curse you to your face. And Israel fell into the booby trap. For you are robbing me, this nation, all of it. Bring all the tithes into the storehouse. Let there be food in my house. And please prove me in this, says Jehovah of hosts. How would we deal with that level of rebellion and frustration? Yet God had it by the lorry load, year in, year out. This is the God that we serve. Whether I don't open for you the windows of the heavens, and shall pour out on you boundless blessing. I shall rebuke the devourer for you, so that it doesn't destroy the fruit of your ground. Nor does the vine fail to bear fruit for you in the field, says Jehovah of hosts. What kind of promise is that when you think it through? Get away from your supermarket. Get away from what the big boys are doing with the GM products and trying to reduce crop production. This is God's way. It's what being in his family is about. And all nations shall call you blessed. Israel being the light to the world that it was meant to be. The whole purpose of our calling. To be lights to the world. And for you shall be a land of delight. said Jehovah of hosts. Your words have been strong against me, said Jehovah. But you have said, what have we spoken against you? The answer. You said, it's worthless to serve Elohim. What mindset have we got to? Had Israel got to at that point? That they saw no benefit. In the Bible Lands Museum in Jerusalem, there are lots of statuettes for Asherah and many other gods, but the Baals particularly. And Israel was hedging its bets. It had these things, so it was saying, yeah, well, we'll worship Jehovah on this outside, but we'll hedge our bets by having the idols of the Baals on this side. We read about it in Ezekiel when he's shown what's going on in the temple. We've all seen it, how the world has developed from those times, how Christianity adopted the Baal way of life, called it Christianity. And what did we gain when we guarded his charge, his laws, his Torah? And when we walked as mourners before Jehovah of hosts. And now we're calling the proud blessed. Can you see a booby trap looming? Israel's calling the proud of the land blessed ones. Not only are the doers of wrongness built up, but they also try Elohim and escape. What's the one thing he said? Don't try me on matters. Even Christ said to Satan, you have heard it said, you shall not try the Lord your God. So Satan knows exactly how to set us up to try God and his patience. Brethren, the gods of the nations, especially the Canaanite gods, the Baals, demanded child sacrifice, and especially in times of war. In some cases, they'd even bury the living child in the foundations of a castle or a watchtower, let alone the burning to Moloch that we've heard about. Do you know, even in medieval England, there were people that were either anchorites or anchoresses, male or female, that were actually built into the wall of a church or a monastery. Oh, they were fed by the community, but no human contact. Didn't go away that far, did it? And today, let's consider whether the God of Iran and its proxies offers 72 virgins for martyrs. What's going to get you the biggest crown? Oh, that's it, yeah. Go and murder the Israelites. Do it on one of their high days and prove that their God can't protect them. You can hear Satan and everything talking like that. That's the nature of the adversary. And we're to rise above that. What about the great whore of Babylon, the Queen of Heaven? Venus in blue jeans, if you like. Her reputation and heritage went between warfare and sex. And probably wasn't that different in either case. If you remember, God put some restrictions on how the army, the men of Israel were to behave in times of warfare and how they were to treat the wives and women of their adversaries, unless they'd been put on a total destruct order. God expected Israel to have responsible behaviour. We're here today to learn of God's approach to responsible behaviour that pleases him. Might not please people that are doing propaganda things all around the planet at the moment, but nonetheless. Ancient texts show that Inanna expected her male and female servants, or priests, priestesses, to present themselves as the opposite sex. Think she's not active today? Think she was just a myth? Look at what's going on. Spirits don't die unless God goes to absolute destruction. She had a male priesthood that willingly emasculated themselves. Not just eunuchs, but the whole job lot. The women were expected to be prostitutes to whoever. But the God of Israel said, you don't worship me like that. You have honour and esteem for one another. You love your neighbour as yourself. This commandment I've given you, and in doing that, you love the Lord your God. Lawlessness abounds, but it's not just any old law. It's not the Hammurabi law code of Mesopotamia, which was to the god Sin. It's the law code to Yehovah, the God of Israel. Specific. Does free sex, pregnancy and abortion not run riot? And any who speak out against it are right-wing monsters? History tells us that Israel got so far removed from God that they even ate their own children. Let's deal with the reality of what this world is like and what the God of this world is like. And let's not blame Israel when they get things out of kilter in the midst of a very hot fire and some self-righteous approach that we wouldn't behave like that. Pray that God doesn't put us to that test. Or mentally prepare in advance how you would do it and ask God to put you through it so that mentally you are prepared. This morning I had a text from a young Jewish guy. He's out in Jerusalem. He's a reporter and on active reserve service in Israel. So you can imagine what his life's like. Married, 2 young children. We were chatting a couple of nights ago and he was going to follow through on something, but then dropped offline. This morning he explained his unit was called to a mother and her children. He sent a photo through. Anybody wants to see it, it's on the phone. She'd been raped in front of her children. This is the God of Gaza, the God of Iran and her proxies, the God of Babylon. We're here to serve and to rejoice with the God of Israel, whose heart is breaking with the things that are going on, and as the planet is turning more and more against Israel, just as it did historically. As we continued our chat this morning, Yair said, I wasn't myself that night after they'd been out to this family. That's why I couldn't come back online. do we even have any comprehension of what these young men and women in the IDF are facing every day of their lives? Might not be the mass genocide that was the event of last year. But these things are still going on. That's the mindset of people who do not worship and obey Jehovah. So, here we are. Yes, this is an offertory. I will get there. You know, there was once a widow. She was living in Roman Jerusalem, where attacks and riots regularly broke out, where the Roman soldiers behaved as many other foreign soldiers did, both then and now. But in spite of her great loss in life, the loss of a husband, of however many years, we don't know if she had children. Very little income, but her heart was for God. Not how much food she'd have, not whether she could heat her home or any other personal service, but it was to God, because she trusted that He would provide and deliver. She wasn't looking at giving to God and His ministers to receive more. She was humble, and with that great humility and that sacrifice, she was so noble that Christ recorded her actions. Turn to Luke 21, please. And looking up, he saw the rich putting their gifts into the treasury. And he saw a certain poor widow putting in 2 mites. And he said, "Truly I say to you that this poor widow has put in more than all. For all these out of their excess have put in offerings for Elohim. But she, out of her poverty, has put in all that she had to live on." This narrative and its depth of meaning is so important, Mark repeats it. I'm not going to turn there. Brethren, whilst we're still sinners, God has blessed us with something that we can't even begin to imagine the true value of. He's blessed us with an atoning sacrifice that no gold, silver, or money could buy. Even the best of the animal sacrifices couldn't take away the death penalty. Only God Himself could do that. We give free will offerings as we are able. The God of Israel does not make cruel demands. He doesn't like us suffering. He doesn't like sacrifice. He loves obedience, but obedience with a willing and kind heart. So, brethren, we are to give during the festival periods, the 3 festival periods. He gives us choice where we direct our gift, but says to the household of faith first. So, brethren, let us do this and rejoice. And our Father is so kind and generous to us. Let's love God and our neighbours, because we live in times that are perilous. Amen.